All right, everyone, welcome back to the Maxon booth here at SIGGRAPH 2023. I am Matthias, aka Major VFX on all the socials, accompanied by some world-renowned artists showcasing Maxon 1 and how they use it in their workflow. Coming up next, to my right, is a master production. Oh man, master of production.
There you go, I'll take it. That works for me.
The master of production, Anthony Bari Jr. Check him out.
All right,
we can do applause too. That's fine. Don't be shy. There he is. Don't wait to the end.
Yes. All right. You got it. Hello. I'm glad to be here in person with everybody here, fellow artists, fellow techs, fellow presenters. And I also want to give a quick shout out to my buddy EJ. It's his birthday today, if he's on the stream. And we're going to talk about a few things that are kind of hidden in plain sight that come with the Universe package, some of the VFX package, some things that kind of get glazed over because, again, these are like some of my personal favorites, and we're going to heat things up. And I'm going to specifically talk about all these featured effects here that you see on the screen. Let me just quickly jump to the Red Giant website, to the Maxon website on the Red Giant side. Let's just talk quickly through some of these. That plugin that's showing here in the background is called the Symbol Mapper, and it's pretty amazing. And I'll show you why. If anybody grew up playing video games, it has that nice nostalgic feel. It kind of looks like the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo. Let me just show you. Let's see where we are, effects. And Symbol Mapper. So I'll be showcasing the Symbol Mapper here. Basically, any pixel, you can shift the density, you can adjust the symbols, you can do all kinds of cool things. I'll show you how it works, and I'll show you things that you can do to make it work better. It's one of my favorite effects that have been added to this package. And then, one of my absolute favorites is the optical glow, and you'll see that comes into play so many times. That glow alone can take any little piece of art, any shape, and just make it look like a light, an LED light, or like a neon sign, and it just looks gorgeous. So let's just jump right in here and just kind of show you my slides here real quick. So we're going to showcase some stuff like this. I'm going to start really analog, and I'm just going to use shapes. If you ask me to draw, I'm going to flunk. So I have friends that draw way better than I do, thanks to this community of artists that we all work with. So I'll be showcasing Symbol Mapper, Heat Wave, Progresso, Optical Glow, Reflection, Type On, Electrify, and Luster. So, anybody a video editor? Anybody motion graphics? If you are, don't be ashamed. Put your hand up. If you happen to use After Effects and you're kind of not necessarily diving in, don't want to do expressions, don't want to be, full of comps to do things, a lot of these tools are going to help you because they'll do two things in one, such as displacement and fractal noise at the same time. And they speak a language of, simplified versus diving into what the fractal actually looks like. So I'll show you. And yes, you can still do that, but I want to show you how you can save a little bit of time. So let's just start here. I'm going to go very analog with this analog fire. Let's see where So I just made some shapes, and then I just did like a little bit of a wiggle on them, just so it looks like fire. It's not necessarily a fire yet, right? But this right here is just kind of 3 triangles from the core to the outer part, and I just kind of did a very simple animation. The ideal situation is that you get something that looks a little bit like this right here. And I'll zoom in. And this is with the Symbol Mapper and with Heat Wave. So Heat Wave is doing a displacement, and like within 2 clicks you can get somewhere really get you right on the path to greatness, right? So this is just those 2 effects, and I'll just show you. Let's just go through, and I'm going to go and try to do a mock-up of what I just did before. And let's go through the Symbol Mapper, and I'll butcher this one on purpose, meaning I'm going to try to do it live here, so don't mind me. Let me show you the very first thing that you need to do when you do this. I also always love to apply a little bit of glow, the dedicated glow effect, which is optical glow. And I'll just start removing effects here. Let me remove the heat wave, optical glow. See the difference here? There's a glow that's included with the symbol mapper, but it doesn't do what the optical glow can do. So that's why I choose to use optical glow separately, independent. Also, this is all based on a grid. So if anybody's been using After Effects for quite some time, you might know Unmult. And Unmult is part of the suite. It's one of these utilities that's been around for quite some time. So Unmult kind of helps us drop that whole grid right there. So now we're just working with the pixels that we want to see, and we're not seeing this grid. So it kind of hides the mesh, right? So let's just go through this effect, and I'm going to try to do my best to make it look pretty decent on the fly here, okay? So bear with me. Now let me uncheck Unmult. So when you apply the effect, let's just step from the top down, all right? You can do a couple of things, all right? And this is, by the way, to apply this effect, if you have Universe installed on your machine, you'll have the red giant Universe dashboard. And inside of here, it's just like one of those awesome menus, like when you go to a diner on the side of the road and they just have all these pictures. That's what this is. This is your diner menu. So, and now I can even get little previews. When you click on anything, it'll give you kind of what the presets that are shipping. And you can even favorite those. And it's just a really easy way to kind of get through all of this stuff without having to guesstimate and look through all of your effects. Now you can kind of see what they're going to do before you even start working. So let me go back here. And I've already applied it, all right? But you can also apply it the classic way, which is going to Effects and Presets, and it's under Universe Effects, under Stylize, RG, Universe, Stylize, and you will see symbol mapper right there. All right. Now that it's been applied, all right, you can do what's pre-process, right? Think like if you've ever applied like green screen. If you ever applied like green screen, you have kind of like that pre-green screen stuff that you do to kind of like make the matte look a little bit better. So this kind of works in the same way. You can kind of pump up these pixels and make them add a little contrast, add a little brightness, right? And I'm just going to play around with this just to show you what that does. But at the same time, you already see that I'm going to cheat at the end and add the optical glow. And now it kind of looks like Light Bright, if anybody remembers Light Bright. So typically, I don't mess with these too much. But just in case, you know, if you're using this on an image, and I'll show you that in a little bit, if you're using it on an image, you might want to pump it up, add a little brightness, add a little contrast, and it's just a balance of the two. So just going straight down, there's this option here, fit to the frame, right? And it depends on what my comp size. I happen to make that comp size really small. So if you see, I like to always kind of fit things to the comp so I don't just have this big frame just floating in space. So I can actually use the align tools correctly. So I like to measure on the screen as I'm working. Now when I go here, let's go back to symbol, fire, and then let's go to our effect controls, and then I have it as fit to frame. It's going to be the same size as my comp. And then here's where you really get to dial this in. Here's where you can really add density to it and kind of breathe life into it. Here's where you adjust right here. You see the spacing for the X and the Y, and even your symbol size. Let me just crank this up and I'll show you. So just to kind of show you what's behind the curtain, when I look here, I have this set to all numbers just because I think numbers are a little bit cooler than just upper and lowercase letters. But if that's what you want, you can do that as well. You can also choose all characters. But I feel like for me, something that looks a little bit more uniform is going to stick out a little bit better. So uncheck that box, and then let's go here, uncheck symbols, and we'll just kind of like go through each one. All right, and you can kind of just see how they look. So this one right now is just symbols, numbers, all right, and then you can even limit. So right now it's at 64. Let's just make that 3. So now you only have 3 different digits here, 6s, 7s, and a 0. Okay, You can also randomize this if you want. You can adjust the evolution speed, so as they change, you can have them static. A lot of different things that you can do with this, and this is all just kind of before you even start animating. You can actually just kind of build it to where it looks good when it's still before you even start to work. So that symbol size is pretty big. Let's just make that a little bit smaller. And again, you can kind of, if you do it like this, that looks more kind of like old school video game right there, right? So you can do something along the lines of that. That's like a size, symbol size 6, right? And then you can also adjust, how they pop on. You can kind of wipe them on. And that right there screams 90s video game, right? So you can adjust how that is, whether you want it left to right. And it's just kind of like a built-in transition, which of course you can keyframe, but I do think the random looks really cool. So with that said, you can also just kind of go in here and adjust. Let's just twirl that up. Now symbol settings, again, I'm just going with numbers right now, and I made them, I only have 3, and twirl that. Here we go. You can also adjust the color. So if you do want them to kind of glow in a different type of color, you can adjust that as well. You can kind of keep it monochrome, or you can keep it, duotone, tritone, just so you have a little variance in there if that helps kind of push your concept. So if we go here, you can also enable scan lines. So if you like the idea of the scan lines and you want it to look like an old CRT monitor or a Nintendo Game Boy or whatever it is, or like a Game & Watch, or the old Tiger games, like you can adjust the size of it. And again, it's not going to look that great until you actually, turn things on and kill that grid. And then it starts to look like something here. So let me just show you the difference between when I use optical glow, and then I'm going to enable glow here. So when you look at the glow that's built into the effect, even using unmult, it's still making the grid glow. So that's why it's a good idea to kind of use the glow externally of this effect. So again, the glow works. And you can kind of use it to your advantage. And again, it's built in, but at the same time, there's way more powerful tool for making things glow. That's the optical glow. So let me uncheck that box. And again, we go from this like really faded situation here, right, to, and again, you want to zoom in too. It really depends on like how big your symbols are, how close together they are, and that kind of really showcases like what the effect can do. So even when you uncheck scan lines, you can see the scan lines do a little bit of damage, but that's what you want if you're going for scan lines, right? And maybe you want to make sure that the spacing is a little tighter, or you could make it, instead of 5, make it 10. All right, and now you can see a difference here. So every little bit of this counts. If you want things to look in a particular way, take your time and just go down this whole checklist of what it could be. You could save a preset, right? So if I like this, I can go in here and save it and just say like, numbers only with scan lines. You can put it in a category, and I just hit save. That would populate under the stylize, and there it is, symbol mapper. And where did we go? There it is. So I have my user preset, and then these are the shipping presets. So you can always favorite this as well, and if you favorite it, go back, and you can find these all relatively easy. So I think favorites should be, well, I'll find it in a moment. So let's just go back here, effect controls, and you can see kind of what I did with this. And then now when I apply optical glow, there's your like light bright, there's your LEDs, right? And then in order to make it kind of make the fire dance a little bit, add heat wave to it. And now we got just a little bit of this little wave to kind of give you the idea that this is a heat wave. You can see that kind of flame moving back and forth, gives you a little bit of displacement. So that's taken a really little dive on the symbol mapper. But this is if I'm, kind of going in just trying to make one little simple fire here. But let's take a look at this as well. So I have these 4 birds. Again, I can't draw, but you give me a pen tool that I can draw a shape, and I can make you a bird. All right. So now I have, the 2, one on the top, one on the bottom. These are just standard shapes that are animated over time. Let me trim this back. Let me follow my own rules here, and just kind of trim this comp to the work area. So now we don't have that. So there. So the idea is, right, if anybody recognizes this is a classic effect that ships with After Effects, and it's been in the program forever. Standard effect called mosaic. You use it to kind of, blur out people's faces. It gives you that 8-bit look. And then when you look over here, this kind of gives you the 16-bit, like, when the video game started progressing a little bit, that's the look that this gives you. So the one here, this right here is the symbol mapper. This one right here is the mosaic effect, and these are just kind of the standard shapes that are changing over time. So the idea is, when you use the symbol mapper, you can make things, tighter together, more dense, and the more dense and the more shine that you have to it, you're going to really notice the difference, and you'll be able to pick out, that there's a bunch of 1s and 0s inside of this little shape right here. So you can use the symbol mapper on your foreground elements, on your background elements. You can just use a simple shape and just animate that over time, and like use it for all kinds of interesting things that you can just do with a couple of clicks that don't necessarily mean that you're, the best at drawing, like myself. So if we go here, take this a step further. Now this is using symbol mapper on video. So let me just show you. I'll go here and let me just turn this symbol mapper off. And I also added this multi-tone here. But this is just like a shot of Hollywood from the mountains there. All right, we just wanted it to look like the welcome screen of a game. All right, so you can add the scan lines, you can add the glow, you can add the multi-tone to give it the flavor, right? All of these things, they're very subtle, but with each little effect that you apply, now I'm adding that much more to it. And again, these are all really subtle things. There's also this right here, this text. This is an effect called luster. All right, and you can use luster to kind of make things look like they're made of metal, made of glass. You can add a reflection map. You can do a lot of things like with this effect, and it's primarily for text. Right? So whenever you do use it, you can kind of invert the background that you already have and kind of have that as a reflection map. So now you can kind of make it seem as though it is made of glass texture. It's a little way to cheat when you're working with 2D stuff. All right, so just kind of flipping through some of these, and then you can kind of see. We also have some text here. This text right here is, I want to say it's either hacker text or it is, I'll tell you right now, it is, type on effect. So if you go in here, there's a whole category for just text, and you can just kind of hover over it. Let me just hit the tilde key so we go full screen, and you can kind of see screen text. All right, if you want it to look like it was loading up something, if you wanted it to look, very much like MS-DOS or an old school arcade machine, right? So you got your insert coin or you got your press start. Really depends on if it's your arcade game or you're going to the 7-Eleven down the street. So besides that, applying symbol mapper to footage, right? Again, look at the type of footage that you have, and then you want to just kind of go down the line of how much density do you want? How much do you want? I've already added. See, I have some brightness and contrast applied to this right here, so you can kind of see the buildings in the distance. You can see the foreground element right here, which is this tree, and then you can see the lights, and you can even kind of make things dance a little bit. So, and then again, you can still do the have it kind of transition on and off. I like to also, which I didn't necessarily mention before, if you see the effect is at 44%, and I have the source behind it at 35%. So that kind of helps with the density of the pixels. As if I were to just drop this, right? Now it kind of looks like that. So it doesn't necessarily have the same pixel values, the same density. So I add a little bit of it back in, and now that's where you get the brightness, and this is where you get kind of the full effect of what the footage is, and it gives you a little bit more flavor. So just treat it like it's tracing paper. Add a little, do a balance between the actual effect opacity. All right, and you can crank that up and down, the effect opacity and the source opacity, and that's going to give you a better look. So you're really kind of just going up and down the form, adjusting your pre-processed settings, tightening up the grid, and then also kind of limiting the characters if you want stuff to look kind of a little bit more uniform, so you could see what it is, but you don't necessarily see what it is. You don't see that there's a caret and then a number 9 and then an S. Sometimes it's just better to have like a very small number of symbols. So, or characters, numbers, letters, everything here that you can choose. So if we go here, again, I'll just kind of flip through, and you can kind of see the differences. And different footage is going to require, depending on what it is and depending on the contrast that you have. So if you have something in log, you can also just drop it right in here. I didn't do any color correction to these. I'll just double click it so you can see. And there's barely any color correction on this. This is pretty flat, right? I think I might have done like a very simple contrast curve, and that's it. But you don't necessarily need to do your color correction before you throw it in here. The whole purpose of it is that you just add a little bit of contrast and then adjust the brightness so you have those values to play with when you're doing something like multi-toning or anything. I'll just hit the button here, and I'm going to render this real quick, and then you'll see. You can also randomize all the pixels kind of changing over time, and it gives you kind of a little, you'll see the pixels dancing a little bit. So once this actually completes here, you just jump back to the beginning. And you can kind of see it. When you look right here, you'll see that those pixels look like they're dancing, and they're just basically changing symbols. And you can adjust, however many, whatever the pool of symbols is. I think I put like 6 or 9 in this one, and they're all numbers. So the idea is over footage, don't need to do color correction, just drop it right in. I added a little bit of flavor with this multi-tone effect right here, and you can also see there's different versions of it. So if I go to choose a preset, it opens it up in this menu here, and you can kind of choose whatever colors that you want. So if you wanted to shift, these are just great starting points. I'm not encouraging anybody to just like drop a preset on there and then hit export. I always encourage you to use this as a starting point, and then go from the starting point to something a lot better. All right, everything needs a little bit of dialing in. So with that, all right, that's kind of showing you just how that all comes together. Now let's jump to a different effect here, and let me just go back here and just talk about what we've already kind of hashed out. We've shown optical glow, which you're going to continuously see, as I am a huge fan. Heat wave, just a little bit, and symbol mapper. We're going to go and I'm going to show you progresso and the reflection, and we've already seen type on and luster, but I'll show you a couple of these other effects here. So let's jump into here, and this one right here, let's just close everything else out, and let's just jump right into here. So right now, I made a makeshift weather screen, right? Because we've had quite the heat wave here. If anybody either lives here and somebody's local, or you live in Arizona, or you live somewhere where it's super hot, right? This is just to emphasize, this is to show you kind of the thermometer effect. And this effect here is called Progresso. And it's basically, you can make charts, you can make them as a line, you can make them as a circle, as a pie chart. You can make them in different types of ways, and I'll show you the presets that ship with this effect. And then you can also have these as somewhat of a standard. So if you see that you're always doing like stats on a sheet or animated graphic that has some sort of stats or some kind of pie chart, this is a great way to kind of emphasize that. So, and once you make it and dial it in, now that's your preset, and now that's something that you can use time and time again. So even if it is by default, I want to say this goes from left to right, but I just comped it and then rotated it so it goes up and down. And then you can also choose what the color is over time, and surprise, surprise, add a little bit of glow to it. And I actually made all these that are in the 100+ range. Those are all glowing just a little bit more than these ones that are rendering right here that are in the 90+ range. And then you'll see here, it's rendering a bunch of things. It's actually rendering the I have a heat wave in the background over live video, and I also have a background with fractal noise and a couple of things. I'll tear this apart here in just a moment as soon as this is done. So you can see the background here is kind of shaking a little bit. So you can see displacement is happening in the background. This is just literally a video of Joshua Tree. Not much movement in it. If you look in the distance, you might see some cars driving by. This is a really hot day in the desert. That's all that is. All right. So to emphasize the heat, you can apply that heat weight effect. If this is too much, you can always make it nice and subtle, especially if people are watching it on a big screen. When you watch it and it's this big, you really can't tell if it's going to give you a headache or not. So when you use this effect, I'm just going to encourage that you use it sparingly and you dial back whatever you see in the little screen, dial it back so it doesn't give you a headache once it gets on a bigger screen. So with that, let's show you Progresso here, and I'll show you kind of what the effect does. Let's just go, I'll hop into this one. And there's my glow. And then here is Progresso. And that's under generators. No, it's under motion graphics, I want to say. Motion graphics, Progresso. And when you click under here, let me just hit the tilde key, and now you can kind of see, we can shop through this menu right here. You got, let's start off at the bottom with like inverted Pac-Man, right? So you can go over here and you can kind of see, these are all my pie charts. These are the linear charts, right? There's like your battery power up sign, right? Here's like a more rounded version. So these are all just kind of variables of the same thing, but just because they go left to right by default, you can flip them around, and you can also adjust where all your numbers are. You can add a marker to it. There's a lot of things that you can do to it. So I'll show you, and I'll tear this effect apart in just 1 second. So again, everything looks like it goes from left to right. You can adjust that, you can comp that, and you can fix it as well. So let's just tab out of this, and I'm going to, before I tear this apart, I'll duplicate that one. And let's just rip this one apart right here. And then just to protect myself here, against myself, I'm going to put a lock on that so I don't mess it up. So let's go here, and I'll show you what's keyframed. Right? And actually, just go here and hit U. And now you can see what's being keyframed currently. So I'll just kind of scrub through this. What's being keyframed is my font color, along with the actual colors of the bar, so the marker color. So when it's going from cool to hot, you can see that it's getting towards the red. So my text and my marker and everything here is matching. And so you can keyframe all of these values at the same time. So now you don't have to go in there and make an expression and tie it to this, to this, to this. You can just kind of go in here, and all of these are options. And then once you already have one set of keyframes, you can just copy and paste that down to the next set of keyframes. And now we have something that'll, over time, change colors. The bar will, the marker will, and they match with the number. Here's the beauty of the number itself. So I have this one going to 96. All right, let's just hit E for effect, twirl this down, and then I'm going to go down to where it says text settings. And there's a little area here for numbers. If you go look under numbers, right, I can see that my final value there, when it reaches the top, is 96. So if I go here and I change this, everything is relative after that. So everything will change. So if I change this from 96 to 101, right, it just got really hot. So if it goes from there, it's going to still do the math. There's no keyframing involved. The keyframing is just literally going from 1 to 100 for progression, and it does all the calculation to make things land at the right time. So you're saving a few steps with expressions and tying one thing to another. It's already built right into here. And that's kind of one way to just do this kind of statistical stuff, or weather charts, or anything that you can imagine that you need to display on a screen to emphasize your point. You can kind of quickly hop in here, adjust your values, even adjust like the way that the data is seen on screen. So if you wanted this to be Fahrenheit or Celsius, if you wanted it to be time, if you wanted it to be, any of these values right here, it does a good job of kind of just jumping in, and you can type in what the absolute value is. It does the math in between, and that kind of saves you that extra step. So without that, you'd be doing this a couple of times. And if you wanted to, kind of change your values here, sometimes that requires you going back, breaking your expression, and then doing it again. So with this, I've also added the reflection effect, and I did that on the pre-comps themselves. Let's just dive into this one. The reflection is just such a simple and easy effect. Let me just show you on here. When you add the reflection, you can adjust the plane, you can adjust where it is, and kind of like, let's do it inside of this pre-comp. I'll make life a little easier. All right, so here it is, and I'm going to go into, so reflection and optical glow are part of the VFX suite. They're not a part of the Universe suite, but they're also a part of Maxon 1, so they're all within the same family of effects. So if I go here, and I'm just going to double click reflection, and now you can see I have this like T, and I can grab this and I can rotate all of my points here. This is my fall off. Kind of adjust this so it's just at the bottom, and you can rotate this however you see fit. And if I go here, now some of the options are here. See how it says clip the bounding box? When you uncheck that, it's actually going to render past where just that layer lives. So now it's kind of generating new pixels. It gave me a warning saying this will take a little bit longer, but hopefully you're on a machine that can render this relatively quick. Most of these effects, they'll render pretty quickly, especially if you're on a newer Mac, if you're on a PC. Pretty awesome as far as how fast that you can run these effects in real time. So now if I go here, I can adjust kind of just how how that's displayed. Now you have progressive linear, and then you have progressive square. And this right here is a little bit more true to life. If I go here and I dial back this fade length, you'll start to see where the fade actually starts. And I'll just zoom in here a bit so you can see that. And again, I'll also bring this up so it's like buttered up right to the bottom of that. And this kind of looks like the Apple retail situation. All right. So whenever they put something, it looks like it's just sitting on a glass table made of, with a white background. You can quickly do that if you're doing any kind of product videos or showcasing something. You can kind of make it look like it's sitting on top of glass. So this effect is really easy. There's a very similar effect called shadow that has very similar, all the same stuff that applies to the shadow versus reflection. So instead of it being an exact replica here, it would be just basically a shadow. So with this, you can go in and you can adjust this, change this to inverse square, right? And again, make it a little bit more true to life. And it just kind of just where that lives, how much of a fade. and kind of work with it by going just top down. By default, a lot of people don't know to just unclip this box right here, because if you leave it clicked, then it kind of clips you off right where your layer ends. So if you start going beyond the bounds of that and you're not at the exact same dimensions, then you'll see a hard edge, and that's not what you want. So it's a good idea to kind of uncheck that box, even if it requires a little bit more render. And again, all this stuff is keyframeable. So you can kind of set this up however you see fit, and you can kind of make things move. If you wanted to mock a camera move, you can also move that reflection and tie that to the camera if you want. And a lot of things that you can do with this right here. So that's just one of the other spices that are inside of this. And you can see I also have luster applied here on this hot text. Go to hot text. And let me just show you some of the controls here in luster, which kind of gives you the effect of reflective or gives you a highlight. You can even adjust. Let's just twirl this down right here. And then currently, I also have heat wave applied to it, just to give me a nice little bit of displacement and just so I can emphasize how hot it is. So if I go here, and you can see you have the option for a reflection map. You can choose layers that you already have into your sequence. You can choose if you want it to be masks and effects. It doesn't have to be just the source with no effects. You can have the source with masks. You can have the source with effects and masks. And then you can also kind of do a shift and adjust how much and how potent that is. And then you can also go here and change. So I can go and look at my reflection and really kind of adjust where it lives. There is another. So I'll show you here. Here's one thing. It's sitting on top of this map here. So as I move that text, you can see that's changing what's behind it. So it's kind of like masked text. But you can also adjust it, and you can keyframe it, and you can kind of make it look like that's coming in and it's starting to burn away. So any of these parameters right here, you'll see one thing that I really enjoy about these effects is a lot of them have, especially like reflection and this luster text, all of this all has on-screen controls. And these on-screen controls kind of allow you to do things, find out what it is, what the parameter is, see what the result is by dragging it and being visual. So as much as we love to do math over here inside the effects controls, it's not that bad to go in here and just kind of like drag things around and see where they live. So that's one thing that kind of makes things move faster, especially if you're in the middle of something and you just don't know what that parameter is. So this, let me twirl this back up. I'll go back here to my project. And where are we here? So another thing is, when I'm looking at all of these, there's a few other things I want to show you. Let's just step back to my original fire, which lives in my open screen. All right, let's revisit this open screen. Right, see, I got my my color channel birds, and let's just show you this here. I have a couple of hidden items here, but let me step into this analog fire. And I have some shy layers in here, which are all just the little embers just kind of spouting off of that, which I just made as tiny triangles. I didn't even try to draw those. I'm going full simple pixel here. So these are just kind of popping off of this, right? And that's just because the fire, you just threw a stick in the fire or something in the campfire or whatever it is. I'll turn those on just so you can see what they are. And let's go back to the open. And then when you look at them, I'll just render that. And you can see with the symbol mapper applied, those all turn into these tiny little sprites. And you can see them as letters, numbers, whatever you set. And now you have these like tiny little characters flying off of your light bright fire, right? So 1, 6. And it kind of just adds to the effect, and it gives a little bit of realism there. So all this from just shapes. I mean, it's definitely not real the way that it's just flaring out like this, but just to kind of give you the idea that you can add a little bit to it, and every single pixel that pops on the screen when you apply the symbol mapper, every single one of those will be affected and turned into whatever symbol it is that you use. So all those triangles right here, all these little tiny triangles that are just kind of popping on the screen, all of those are turned into ones and zeros once we get back to here. You can kind of see what they turn into. Besides that too, just show you, let's just go back to our menu here, and I'll just show you. Inside of this, all these effects, like there's so many to look at, and at the same time, maybe you use them in one way, or they look like they're displayed in one way, but they're not used. I like to do things and kind of just try something with what I believe the effect can do, even though it's not supposed to do that. Like, you can make anything, use fractal noise for anything. You can do these backgrounds here. This just always, and multi-tone, these are things that I see myself using all the time, like the multi-tone, or just generating a quick soft gradient background. If I click on this here, you'll see these are some of the options. And then you can also use it to kind of like emphasize, kind of color overlays on any piece of footage. So just because it looks like it's just generating a background here, it's not just for that. You can also use this as an overlay, and that preset right there will give you this with the opacity applied. So now you can kind of warm up your footage, or add a little bit of highlights to your footage, or like this solar burn one right here. So this is just a way to kind of punch things up, make them look a little bit more interesting. And, if you want to vary it up, put this on an adjustment layer and then blend that back and then change the opacity. And now you can work with this even more. But I tend to go in here and just use these textures as, a way to kind of get more textures going. Here's your instant backgrounds. So if anybody used to play with fractal noise and kind of go in and try to do the math and get things to land at the right time over evolution, right? Now these are all kind of same idea, a lot of starting points. All right, so some are more circular, some kind of look like, you're looking in a microscope. Some look like liquid. You have a ton of options here. And then look, you even have these lower third strips. And I've had to do, many a times I've had to just pull a lower third out of thin air. Let's just put a third on it and just get it out, This is a great way to kind of, you already have some animated noise back there, and you can dial that back, and you can change that however you see fit. So this is one effect. Even though these are your starting points here, look, you even have light leaks. This is not the effect that I would do light leaks with, because there's a better one, but this is an option inside of this effect. The effect that I would use rather than using this is overlight. And the overlight effect, I'll just show it to you. And we're coming here to the tail end, and I'll take some Q&A in just a moment. But let's just apply this to a piece of footage. And I'll solo just this one here. And let me put, where are we? Generators, glow. I want to say it's under stylize. All this cool stuff is under stylized. There it is, overlight. So I'll apply this to that effect on the bottom. Give me a little bit of a wash. Again, this hasn't been color corrected. There's another little fix for that. If you end up working with this footage that's log, you can quickly get in here. There's an option for, it's called finisher, right? And you can go in here. Let me just turn off heat wave, twirl that back up, and let me bring finisher above the overlay and change my stacking order here of effects. All right, so here's finisher, and let's just go choose a quick preset. And this is basically going to like adjust your contrast and kind of make things a little bit more friendly as far as, contrast or where things live. When you have all this log footage, it's kind of hard to look at sometimes. So this really helps you just get to a really good, quick place with the footage that you already have. I'm just kind of like shopping through these effects here. And look, this one is just contrasty. Or saturation boost, sharpen. Here's your default here. when you go look at the effect itself, you can crank this down. Here's contrast. And I can go and let me turn off overlight. Overlight seems to be washing out my footage. So if I go here and adjust the contrast, enhance contrast, which is going to go down in between, all the existing contrast, and just kind of go into those pixels and those fine lines and kind of bring those out. Adjust your detail, exposure, right? Bring that in the negative values here, and then once you do this, and then you kind of crank up your contrast, and you can also kind of do a balance, right? And then add some overlight. Overlight, like I said before, this is great, but the idea is that, let's just go choose a preset. The idea is this is kind of giving you those light leaks. So there's a few of them in here. These are all my presets for this. You can do like a little side sparkle, right? Or torches. Let's go to torches here. You can really notice it when my footage is not so log. But you can also go in, I want to say, and adjust this at the asset level and apply a LUT to it inside of newer versions of After Effects as well. So the idea is, if you wanted to do anything, and kind of our original topic here is kind of bringing the heat and just showing you that you can add things with glow. You can add, let's go back here. Add things with glow. You can pump things up with the symbol mapper and the optical glow. Progresso, heat wave, reflection, type on, electrify is another great one. I'm using electrify right here on this bring the heat text. So, and all of these things are very easy to animate, and they have a lot of great starting points that ship with each effect. And of course, you can always create your own and share those. So then that way you don't find yourself doing the same recipe time and time again from scratch. So I think that would take us to just about our Q&A. I don't know if Matthias is around, but if anybody has any questions here in our immediate audience, I can take those one-on-one. There you go. Thank you. I feel like you heard your name or something.
All right, everyone. Anthony Bari. We do have like 3 minutes for questions for anybody who has any questions about his process techniques or overall, well, I guess that's about it. Workflow.
Effects.
That's
menus of effects.
Anything for Anthony. So the question is, with Symbol Mapper, can you readjust the fonts for different character sets?
The font, as of right now, is kind of locked at where it is. But because you say things like this, that's how things improve. So, but yeah.
For example, you could use it kind of the same way you might something like CC ball action, where kind of digitizing the images.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so similar to CC ball action is what he's asking about, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
this is literally, I want to say, the 1.0 or 1.2 version, and it's only going to get better. So, like, suggestions like that or even questions like that kind of help.
I saw something kind of similar with scripts that you had created.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. More questions for Anthony. Awesome. Well, Anthony will be at the Dell booth for the next hour at our demo station if you wanted to go into anything else in more detail. But stick around. Our next presenter will be up here shortly with Handel Eugene. So you're going to want to stay tuned for him.
All right. Thank you.